A new year, a fresh start, a clean page, another beginning. 2024 has come. This is the first Sunday we gather in the new year. Congratulations to all of you on keeping that resolution to go to services more often by being here today. And so much still seems possible. Judging by the messages that come our way from the culture around us, messages I've heard from some of you, a new year seems to inspire a kind of optimism and hope in us, except maybe for where the presidential election is concerned, but that's a subject for another sermon. Whenever a year just ended has been a tough one, then we turn to a new year with a sense of relief. Finally, 2023 is over and done with, and we look forward to better times ahead. If the year just ended was a rewarding one, then we turn to a new year with a sense of gratitude and move into our future from a position of strength and satisfaction. I don't so often hear expressions of regret when a year ends, no matter how wonderful that year might have been. Instead, we usually seem ready to turn to the new calendar and march on to what surely will be better times because we're wired to live that way. I suspect, though such sentiments do not usually show up in the culture, that we also march into the new year with a degree of anxiety. I know I do. Will I be up to the as yet unforeseen challenges that may come my way in 2024? Will the new year bring times of loss for me? And how will I handle them? Will the people I love make it through the coming year in good health and good spirits, or will they have to endure times of sorrow and challenge? Will this church congregation, as I prepare to say goodbye to you next month, navigate the decisions that lie ahead for you in a spirit of faith and goodwill, no matter how or when you disagree? Will you be ready to welcome a new settled minister in the spring with the conviction that your new partnership will be creative and meaningful? By the time 2025 comes, who among us will still be here? Who will we have lost? For all the sense of adventure a new year can inspire in us, there are threads of darkness in it that will also come our way, along with the blessings and satisfactions. Poet William Blake had it right. Joy and sorrow are woven fine. They may seem quite separate when we stand on a New Year's threshold, but both, joy and sorrow, will be part of our coming experience, no matter how carefully we live, no matter how wisely we choose, no matter how generously we love, perhaps especially as we love generously. So maybe along with wishing one another a happy new year, we might also wish one another the ability to hold on tight as we head around the bend into 2024. The month of January offers a challenging, or maybe welcome, contrast after holiday experiences of tidings of joy, shopping, eating to excess, and being busier than almost any other time of the year. We race along through the late fall and beginning of winter and race into January to face not much of anything, except long weeks, short days, and a kind of echoing emptiness. While some spiritual traditions suggest that we could find emptiness a positive quality and associate it with peace or an absence of craving or an opportunity to listen deeply for the soft stirrings of the spirit, our culture generally has only negative things to tell us about emptiness. An empty life, an empty home or an empty nest, an empty feeling approaching the day. From the cultural perspective, emptiness implies loneliness, lack of purpose, poverty of spirit, maybe literal poverty. So we feel the pressure to find even a moment of emptiness undesirable, wasted time that we should be filling with activity, or maybe we buy something or eat something to replace emptiness with feelings of fullness. So what do we do with the contrast between cultural perspectives on emptiness that urge us to avoid it and spiritual perspectives on emptiness that suggest we might consider embracing it? And how do we step into the emptiness that is here today? I said to my soul, "Be still and wait without hope." For hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love, for love would be love of the wrong thing. There is yet faith, but the faith and the love and the hope are all in the waiting. Wait without thought, for you are not ready for thought. So the darkness shall be the light, and the stillness the dancing. Caught up in emptiness, pressured to do something to fill the emptiness, these lines from T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets urge us instead to just let the emptiness be, to settle into it more deeply as a time of waiting for whatever will come without our doing anything but waiting. He dismisses hope, love, and thought, all the resources we would ordinarily summon to help us get through emptiness, so that it becomes a time of being still and being willing to wait. To wait without hope means I don't give myself those reassuring messages about the waiting not lasting too long, or looking for some kind of movement which signals the waiting is about to be done, saying things like, well, I think this line is starting to move, or I think the traffic is about to loosen up, or I think the weather is going to lift soon. Waiting without love becomes difficult, since a time of emptiness and waiting may be the time we would rather pull out our phone or make some comment to those standing around us just to fill the silence. And as if those notions were not already hard enough, Eliot brings in the challenge of waiting without thought, because when all else fails, we endure emptiness and waiting with some kind of mental activity. Make a grocery list, we work out a schedule, we think through a job task, we daydream about a vacation, we send our endlessly inventive minds in any number of directions rather than just focusing on the empty moment we stand in. But Eliot says that sort of thinking is not helpful because you're not ready for thought. Until we've let the emptiness settle into us and around us and experienced it, in order for it to be something other than wasted time. What would it be like for you to wait if you just stood there or just sat there doing nothing, thinking about nothing? Author William Bridges has written extensively about the process of transition, both personal transitions and organizational transitions. In his template for how an experience of transition typically unfolds, he envisions our passing through 3 stages. We start, he says, not at the beginning, but at an end, when something that has been part of our lives is disappearing. This ending period is followed by an odd hiatus or a suspension, which he calls the neutral zone, where nothing seems to be happening, though that appearance of nothing happening is deceiving. The last stage he terms the beginning, when the new element that was to come from the transition finally emerges. A simple example of this sort of transition process can be seen whenever any of us launches or is launched by forces outside us into a time of change. Perhaps we decide to relocate, to find another job, to go back to school, to have a child, to search for a new minister. Our established routines and relationships are all impacted, and what has been starts to disappear. The endings Bridges talked about. Well, I've heard from many of you excitement about what emerged as we started our transition together a year and a half ago. You also said goodbye to some of what had been familiar to you. And more goodbyes, more endings are on the horizon when I say goodbye to you in February. After those endings, we undergo a period of disorientation as we cast about for new routines and figure out how now our relationship's going to work. Now, how will we do our congregation work? Bridges notes this period can be extremely difficult because of the disorientation it brings, something I hope you can remember when you enter the months ahead without the usual staffing configuration of a lead minister. Then the new job, or new home, or anticipated child, or new settled minister arrives, and we move fully into the next chapter of our lives. But that neutral zone, to use Bridges' unappealing term for the middle stage of a transition, that is a kind of emptiness that we are likely to do everything in our power to make it be over, since it requires of us exactly the sort of waiting that Eliot advises, waiting without trying to move things along in any way. Bridges warns that efforts to jumpstart something while we're in the neutral zone are foolish and almost always fail, prolonging the transition and bringing us undue amounts of pain. Again, something to remember for the months that come ahead for you. This is a part of any transition that cannot simply be abbreviated, and it must be endured, however much we may not want to. Because the neutral zone is a reminder of the degree to which our lives finally are not entirely in our control. We can work and plan and schedule and stay busy, and still, especially in the larger dimensions of our lives, things will happen outside our little sphere of influence which we cannot control. The more we accept that lack of control, the less anguish we have to endure. Whenever a time of waiting has come for me, and I'm able finally to stop stomping about, complaining, fretting, swearing, all the behaviors I have when I see control lost. Whenever I can just let the emptiness come and not fight it, then I found that however long or short the wait ends up being, there is a strange kind of peacefulness with it. Fighting emptiness, fighting the neutral zone, interferes with the new birth that is underway at that very moment. Perhaps to help us endure a transition a bit, psychologist Carl Jung located an intermediate time of emptiness as part of a process of spiritual transformation that he described in terms of alchemy, the ancient vision of turning ordinary substances into gold. Such a transformation begins, Jung noted, with blackening, akin to Bridges' image of change starting out not with a beginning, but with an ending, with destruction of what exists. This is followed in alchemy by the whitening, when no change, no movement at all can be discerned because the movement is so very subtle that our usual perceptions don't detect it. The final alchemical stage, the reddening, Jung said, is when the new element, the gold we've been seeking, begins to appear. And like bridges, Jung warns that we'll be tempted to rush through the whitening intermediate stage. We get bored, we get impatient at the lack of progress. Yet rushing that stage only means we disrupt the process and interfere with the growth, the transformation into gold that is happening beneath the surface. I said to my soul, "Be still and wait without hope, wait without love. There is yet faith, but the faith and the love and the hope are in the waiting." Eliot points to the resource we'll need in order to endure waiting, endure the neutral zone, endure the whitening, endure the coming months while the search committee is working elsewhere and this congregation is without a lead minister. That resource is faith. And it comes into play for Eliot specifically when we wait in the fashion he envisions, waiting without chasing after some hope for the waiting to hurry up and end, without chasing after interactions that might somehow distract us from the utter emptiness of waiting. To wait without hope, without love, without thought means giving up all possibility of control of the experience and leaving it where exactly? Traditional language would say we leave it in God's hands. Less traditional, spiritual language might say we leave it up to the mystery around us, or we leave it up to the larger forces that are at play in any situation, or that we lie back in the interconnected web of existence and let it hold us for a time without us doing anything. Those are responses of faith when faith is understood not to mean belief in some sort of proposition or creed, which is how the word faith is often wrongly used, but faith understood as a kind of radical trust. If I have faith in God, faith in a fundamental goodness of life, faith in my own creative resources to deal with whatever comes, faith in the support of people who love me, faith in the strength of that interdependent web which holds me up every moment. If I have faith in that way, I can settle into emptiness without grasping for distraction or control, and simply let it be for however long it's going to last. The emptiness, the neutral zone, the whitening will in time, in its own time, which is not necessarily my time, it will yield to the reddening, the beginnings of the new thing, the gold we hope for. That long line does eventually move. The weather does eventually lift. The doctor does eventually call me back. The baby is eventually born. The search committee will eventually announce their candidate for your minister. The next thing I am so eager to have come will eventually come. Probably not when I wanted, perhaps not in the way I wanted, but it will come. Emptiness is not endless, however much it may seem to be so. In Eliot's words, what happens next when we've gone through the emptiness in a spirit of faith is incredibly lovely. So the darkness will be the light, and the stillness the dancing. In these post-holiday empty months, whether we're in the throes of a bit of suffering caused by delays, or the throes of a lot of suffering caused by illness or loss, imagining that somehow light and dancing are ahead seems impossible. Which is all the more reason for us to come together, to sing and reflect, to share this sacred space and time, and to remind each other that the present time of emptiness does not go on forever. May we hold fast to one another's hand as we wait for the light to shine, for the dance to begin, for the new minister to arrive, for the new life we long for to be ours. May it be so. Amen.